Welcome to The Feast Life, where we empower you, the modern homeschool mom, to create a life and homeschool you love, one founded on faith, family, freedom, and fun. I'm your host, Julie Ross, creator of the award-winning homeschool curriculum, A Gentle Feast, and a certified Christian life coach. For more information on today's episode and to access my free gift for you, check out thefeastlife.me. Charlotte Mason once said, "Life should be all living, not a mere tedious passing of time." So on this show, we seek to savor the feast of life. Girl, grab your favorite beverage and pull up a chair. You are welcome at this table. So first of all, for anyone who is new to my world, I'm Julie Ross. Hey. And I am the creator of A Gentle Feast, and those are my 5 kiddos. My oldest graduated with a degree in graphic design. She actually works for me now, which is so fun. Work with your own child. And then my second daughter will be a senior, and she's studying neuroscience, senior in college, and she's studying neuroscience. And I have 3 teenagers that I'm still homeschooling. So lots of prayers for me. Thank you. I need those. All right, so you are in the right place if you came on to this workshop because you are new to homeschooling. Maybe you're just starting out homeschooling, or maybe you have recently pulled your children out of school. You're in the right place, okay? So this approach that I'm going to be teaching you about, the perfect time to learn that when you're just starting out here, or when you're trying to heal some of your children's experiences from school. If you are new to Charlotte Mason, this is the right place for you too. I will give you a lot of kind of foundations to how this approach can really transform your homeschool in a practical way. And if you are totally Charlotte Mason guru and you've been doing this for a while, but you just need some encouragement because it's the end of the year, can I get an amen? I'm hoping that this talk will help you get out of all the details and did we finish this and do we have to do this and all the things that we think about all the time, and help you get a bigger picture and get some kind of more understanding, clarity of why you're doing what you're doing, and how this kind of approach affects the daily work that you're doing in your homeschool. So hopefully I covered everybody on this call. If you're here for a different reason, let me know in the chat. But hopefully this will hit all areas that you are needing depending on how you're coming into this call. All right, so just real fast, I'm guessing on a call this big, there are some of you who do not know who Charlotte Mason is, so I'm going to be real fast here. Charlotte Mason was an educational philosopher. She lived in the late 1800s, early 1900s. She founded the House of Education in Ambleside, England, where she trained governesses to use her philosophy, to use her methods, and to go into people's homes. So she really is the only educational philosophy out there that is primarily for home education. She also started the Parents National Education Union, which sent out programs of courses of studies for all ages throughout England and eventually throughout the whole British Empire. And since the 1980s, her philosophy has been adopted by hundreds and hundreds of homeschoolers. Real fast, just want to make sure, because I'm going to quote her and you're like, who is this lady? I want to make sure you have an understanding of who it is that I'm talking about, okay? Whether you have been using Charlotte Mason for years, never heard of her, completely new, this talk and what we're going to be covering over the next 3 days will really help you just see, I'm hoping, will help you see education in a different light. So I'm going to be contrasting kind of our traditional education system and then the approach that Charlotte Mason was advocating. So first, let's look at this traditional path, okay? So how many of you went to what you would consider like a traditional school? Like whether that was public school, private school, traditional being the teacher gives. I'll explain it, and then if you're not sure, you can put that in the chat, but some of you probably know already. Yes, I was a product of this traditional kind of school mindset. So the traditional path is teacher focused. So the teacher is like the fountainhead of all knowledge. The teacher gives lectures, right? The teacher knows the answers. They have the knowledge within them, and they're imparting it to you as the student. The traditional path, the teacher is the one that is motivating the students, right? They have to come up with lessons that are fun and engaging and considering all the different learning styles and all the different needs of their classroom. The teacher is the one doing that work. The traditional path is results driven. So usually it's grades, there's competition among students, there is a definite result that you're trying to get to on this path. So by the end of this school year, you will have learned XYZ. And I will know that you have learned XYZ because there will be like a test or a paper on it. And then the teacher will grade that because, again, the teacher is the fountainhead of all knowledge. And they will tell you if you achieved that result or not. And then the traditional path is utilitarian, meaning it is the same for everybody. So you're in this grade. These are the things you're going to learn in this grade because you're in this grade, and everybody in your school that's also in that grade is going to be learning the same exact thing. And by the end of, let's pick something, by the end of third grade, we will know that you have achieved this result. Again, we're going to measure that, right? And in order to know that you have succeeded, you should get this result by the end of third grade because of whatever age you are. Third grade, 8 years old, right? Or 9, because you're 8 or 9, you should be able to do X, Y, Z. And we're going to measure that at the end of the year. And it's the same for everybody. Okay. So let me see. I see a lot of you are like, yes, this was the traditional path I have. Okay. So we all can relate to that. Even if you had a really great educational experience, right? You can see how this traditional mindset works, right? We also, and some of you, I see you're saying that here, like you were homeschooled, right? But you were homeschooled according to this traditional path, which really is true because like when I first started homeschooling, so I've been in education for 25 years. I was a public school teacher. Then I helped start a private Christian school. And then I helped found a homeschool academy. And I've been homeschooling my own kids. So I've been in like all the different realms of education. And I have seen how this traditional path has evolved in those past 25 years, but then also like how it is pervasive in all these different models. So even when I first started homeschooling, like the traditional path really was all there was. Major curriculum companies that normally would sell their products to private Christian schools were now marketing those products to homeschoolers, but they were the exact same products. And there really wasn't a whole lot of information out there that there was something else. So when I first started homeschooling, like I just went down this path because this is all I knew. And this is what I had been trained to do as a teacher. And I didn't know there was a different option. I didn't know there were actual other ways that children actually learn more or do better. I just knew in my heart, though, that I didn't want this path, even though it is what I had been trained to do. It was what I was practicing. I didn't know anything else, so I followed it. But very shortly into like my first years of homeschooling, I was like absolutely miserable. And I'm like, I don't want to keep going down this path. I don't believe this is how children learn best. There has to be something else. And that's when, thankfully, I started reading Charlotte Mason's volumes and seeing, oh, not everybody believes that children should learn this way. In fact, for hundreds of years, this has not been the traditional path. This has been in the past 150 years that this has been the approach to education. But for centuries before that, children learn much, much differently. How do we go back to that roots of what's been good for children to learn? So I probably am preaching to the choir here, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, this traditional model is failing our children. So in 2015, education secretaries estimated that 82% of our country's public schools are not passing the test in terms of educating our children well. According to a recent article in Psychology Today, teens are the most stressed out age group in America today. Wow, just let that sink in for a moment. And 83% of them cite school as the reason for their stress and anxiety. And study after study has shown this, how much stress and anxiety, how our kids are so depressed as teenagers. And a lot of them are saying it's because of school. In 2019, the National Assessment of Educational Progress come out with a report that said only 35% of fourth graders are proficient in reading, and only 40% of eighth graders in our country are proficient in math. I know you all know this, right? Because this is why you're homeschooling, partly, maybe, right? But I want to lay this foundation here because even if you are homeschooling, we can still fall under this model in what we're doing in our homeschools, but also in our thinking, how we view children, what we believe about education. I would argue that you could even be doing like a Charlotte Mason education, but you still have this model going on in the background of your mind, and it's influencing the way that you're teaching your children. It's influencing the atmosphere of your home and what you're expecting from your children when. So I'm here for this workshop to let you all know education wasn't always like this. Again, this traditional path is fairly new in terms of human history. For the past 50 years, it was, before then, it was a completely different model. It was more family-centered. It was more humanities-based. It was more learning and experience-based. And really, it wasn't until the 1850s and bringing compulsory schooling into America based on the model of education in Prussia and blah, blah, blah. There's so much stuff here. But when you dig into the history of our modern school and where this mindset came to be, it's fascinating. And so that's what I've been digging into in the past couple of months. I had a woman on my podcast, Christy Faith. She wrote this book called Homeschool Rising, Shattering Myths, Finding Courage, and Opting Out of the School System. And she has a ton of statistics and research here just on the harm that traditional schooling is having on children. But during our interview, I said to her, I think using the Charlotte Mason approach has healed my relationship with education. And we both just sat there for a minute, like completely silent. And she was like, wow, that is so profound. And I was like, yeah, that's the first time I've ever said that. It just dawned on me during this amazing discussion we were having, like, oh, wow, this has completely changed the way that I view education, the way I view children, but it's also healed the education that I didn't have. Even though I had a fantastic education in comparison to a lot of things, I went to great schools. I had great teachers, but I was the kid who was like extremely performance driven, right? And I had to have the A plus. I had to have the scratch and sniff sticker. I remember even like in first grade, and back then in the 80s, I was a latchkey kid. So like I was 7 and I would come home from school by myself. Could you imagine in today's world? But anyway, that's the topic for another day. And I would come home and I would sit at the dining room table and I would do homework until my dad would come home from work. And he's like, what are you doing? I didn't go outside and play. I was like, oh, I got to study. I got to figure this out. What was I trying to figure out in first grade? I'm not really sure. But that over and over with kids in school and the amount of homework they have, that I was just very driven my whole entire life. And it was always based on, what's the teacher going to give me? What do I need to know for the test? It wasn't to learn for the sake of beauty of knowledge, even though I was a very self-driven child and I loved learning. And I was like, endless bucket, please keep filling up me with information. I want to know more and more. I just see now the harm that it does. And there's a part of me that's like, man, I wish I could just go back to that little girl and be like, you can just relax. You don't have to keep trying so hard. You're going to learn things and you're going to grow. And there's a beautiful world of education because I love learning. I love reading, and I would have been open to that. And so part of my homeschool journey has been healing like my experience of growing up in the traditional education system. So I want to ask you this question. Again, you don't need to put anything in the chat, but really think for a second. What do you believe is the purpose of education? Like, how do children learn best? Why are we educating? Why are you homeschooling your kids? We can get so caught up in like all the details and all the plans, and I'm sure most of you are like already planning for next year, right? And all these details and how am I going to finish up this year, that we can lose sight of the big picture. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I sacrificing all this time and energy to homeschooling my children? Do I want it to look like everything else that's out there in our modern traditional school system? Is that what I'm trying to emulate? Or do I want something different? Do I believe kids learn best differently? And then how do I actually make that happen? And that's what we're going to be talking about in the workshop today. So Charlotte Mason had this to say: thoughts breed thought. Children familiar with great thoughts take as naturally to thinking for themselves as the well-nourished body takes to growing. We must bear in mind that growth, physical, intellectual, moral, spiritual, is the sole end of education. So Charlotte Mason would argue that the purpose of education, so the sole end of education, is that our children can think for themselves and that they're growing as complete people, physically, intellectually, moral, spiritually. The whole person is growing here. We're growing the whole entire individual, not just academically. And I love this kind of definition that she proposes, right? We want kids to think for themselves. Wow. Is that the traditional school system's goal? No, right? Is it nurturing the whole entire complete child and not just one piece? No. So let's look a little deeper into this and how the modern view of how children should learn came to be. Like I said, it started about the 1850s here in America with compulsory schooling, Horace Mann, John Dewey. You can read about all those people if you want to dig into it. But I was going to give you a real quick overview here. Woodrow Wilson, back when he was the president of Princeton, not when he was president of the United States, in an address to the High School Teachers Association of New York, said this: "Let us go back and distinguish between the two things that we want to do in our modern society. We want one class of persons to have a liberal education. We want another class of persons, a very much larger class of necessity in every society, to forego the privileges of a liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific, difficult manual tasks. You cannot train them for both in the time that you have at your disposal. They must make a selection, and you must make a selection. But what I'm intent upon is that we should not confuse ourselves with regard to what we are trying to make of our pupils under our instruction. We are either trying to make them liberally educated persons out of them, or we are trying to make skillful servants of society along mechanical lines, or else we don't know what we're trying to do." I love that part. Okay, so basically what he's saying is we're taking our students, and we have to decide, or they have to decide, because we don't have enough time. Are we going to give them a liberal education? By liberal here, it's like, and Charlotte Mason uses that word too. It's like a liberal arts degree you would get from college. It means like the humanities. Okay. And then we need a much larger class, he's saying, of people who are skilled in manual tasks. And that is important, right? We need those people for sure. Okay. He's saying that these people get to be liberally educated. They get to have a rich living education. And then these people, we want them to be skillful servants of society. Today's episode is brought to you by A Gentle Feast. A Gentle Feast offers a complete living books curriculum, an award-winning early reading program, and more tools to equip you to apply Charlotte Mason's timeless philosophy into your modern homeschool. Go to agentlefeast.com to check it out. Smooth and easy days are closer than you think. Wow, such a different view of people. And here, listen, it's the teacher who is making this out of the pupils. Again, it's that mindset. It's the teacher's work. The teacher's the one making something out of the students. You probably heard like students are like little lumps of clay, right? And the teacher's molding them according to their will. It's a scary thought, right? So Charlotte Mason says something completely different. She says, "But the people themselves begin to understand and to clamor for an education which shall qualify their children for life rather than for earning a living. As a matter of fact, it is the man who has read and thought on many subjects who is, with the necessary training, the most capable, whether in handling tools, drawing plans, or keeping books. The more of a person we succeed in making a child, the better will he both fulfill his own life and serve society." So here she said, in fact, one of the chapters in her book is called A Liberal Education for All. She believes all children, no matter of their class, station, family, anything, deserve to have a liberal education. And in doing so, you're preparing the children for life rather than their job, right? Earning a living. And she says, it doesn't matter what you end up doing, okay? It doesn't matter if you're president of the United States or if you're working with a hammer. By reading great books, by being filled with truth and beauty, you're going to make the world a different place. Your life will be richer. And everybody deserves that opportunity. So in her book, A Philosophy of Education, in the chapter called A Liberal Education, in elementary school, she writes this: "A liberal education is like justice, religion, liberty, fresh air. It is the natural birthright of every child." So every child deserves to have this kind of education where we're not molding a lump of clay, where we're not just preparing them to be here's your job, here's the thing, only things you need to know, here's your life, but making them have a rich, full, beautiful life. So this is a question I had to really ponder for myself. Like I said, during that interview, it really hit me. And I want you to think this through for yourself. How is our modern educational systems worldview influencing your homeschool? So you might think, Julie, it doesn't. I'm using a Charlotte Mason philosophy. You might be even using a gentle feast. It doesn't influence my homeschool at all. And that might be true. And if that's the case, that is amazing. But I would also say that I'm just going to throw out some examples here of how I have seen, as I reflect now back on the homeschooling journey I've had for the past 20 years, of how it's influenced my homeschool. So it could be that you still have the society's belief that children of a certain age should all be able to do X, Y, Z. So if you're this age, you should be able to read this, write this, think about this, right? And you're not taking that individual child that God has put in front of you into consideration and saying, okay, this child is a person, as Charlotte Mason would say. They're going to develop at their own pace and in their own time. It's not standardized, okay? So again, that could be one of the ways. You might feel this pressure, right? Like we got to get through all this stuff. And we got to get through all this stuff, and then we can relax, and then we can go outside, and then we can do our handicrafts and enjoy the rest of our day. Come on, let's go. And you feel like you're spending your days like pushing and prodding your kids, even if you're reading really great books. And it's from this mentality of, we don't have enough time. We got to fit it in all right now. We can't have any gaps. We got to make sure stuff, which again comes from this modern educational worldview that it's up to the teacher to be the fountainhead of all knowledge and pouring all this stuff in. So even if you're just really reading great books and using a Charlotte Mason philosophy, you can still feel this pressure that we are constantly having to squeeze everything in, and that school is separate from our lives. Let's just get all this stuff done, and then we can go outside and enjoy and play, and not realizing like that's part of the childhood experience. That is where children learn so many different things from as well, and valuing both things. That again can come back from this worldview and what our society is telling us about childhood and learning and how we all learn best. And I think sometimes that fear comes. Am I doing enough? Am I preparing them for what they need? And are they going to be successful someday? And we can let those fears and worries just eat at us and influence how we're showing up on a regular basis in our homeschools. What kind of atmosphere? Is it an atmosphere of stress and control and worry and fear? Or can we in faith go, I'm not buying into this anymore. I am trusting that what we are doing is good and rich and beautiful, and it's growing a complete person rather than just checking off boxes and trying to get through our day. In the book, Free to Learn, the subtitle is Why Unleashing the Instinct to Play Will Make Our Children Happier, More Self-Resilient, and Better Students for Life. He brought up this fear, which I thought was really interesting, that we are uncertain about future employment. We all want our children to be successful, to be able to provide for their families. And we live in a world where, yeah, that's uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen in our economy. So he says, a result of this is that parents worry about their child's ability to make a living more than they did in past times. This has increased our tendency to view childhood as a time of resume building rather than a time of play. Somehow parents believe if they can get their children into the right adult-directed extracurricular or volunteer activities, get them to achieve high scores on a test, and get them into the most prestigious schools, they can protect their children's futures. The reality is, and this is what's so key, because when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, I've had that mentality at times. Here is the alternative. The reality is that the best protection against unemployment in uncertain times is having precisely those qualities people develop through self-directed learning, not through the prodding of parents or teachers. Uncertain times require personal responsibility, independence of thought, self-initiative, self-assertion, flexibility, creativity, imagination, and willingness to take risks. And I was like, yes, wow, right? Those are all skills that we develop in this kind of approach to education that I'm going to talk about, but we can still be so fearful and be like, is this enough? We got to make sure that we're doing all these things so that my child can get this job and have this outcome. Again, it's that results driven mentality. So I just ask you, you might want to like journal about this. It's not a Charlotte Mason book. No, it's by Peter Gray. To just start to notice, are there any ways that this traditional way of viewing education subtly infiltrating into my homeschool? And do I want that? So it's just something for you to consider. I would like to propose that instead of this traditional path, that there's a different path. I call it the gentle path. The gentle path honors the child, and it actually provides them with true intellectual nourishment. It's not trying to stuff them, it's trying to feed them. Charlotte Mason said, our crying need today is less for a better method of education than for an adequate conception of children. She's saying we need to change the way that we view children. And I think it's fascinating because that Woodrow Wilson quote I read you, like her and him and Charlotte Mason were both kind of writing at the same time here, okay? Right around the end of World War I. And so it's really key that she is proposing something completely different. And I would argue that even 100 years later from when she wrote, it's still needed. We need to have a different view of children, how they learn, what they actually need to grow. In the book, Dumbing Us Down, The Hidden Curriculum of Compulsory Schooling, which is written by John Taylor Gatto, he won New York City's best public school teacher many years in a row, if you're not familiar with him and his writing. But this is what he says, and I love this, and I hope this just lights a fire within you for what's possible in your homeschool. So listen, now for the good news. Once you understand the logic behind modern schooling, its tricks and traps are fairly easy to avoid. School trains children to be employees and consumers. Teach your own children to be leaders and adventurers. Schools train children to obey reflexively. Teach your own children to think critically and independently. Schooled kids have a low threshold for boredom. Help your own to develop an inner life so that they'll never be bored. Urge them to take on the serious material, the grown-up material in history, literature, philosophy, music, art, economics, theology, all the stuff school teachers know well enough to avoid. Again, that humanities. Challenge your kids with plenty of solitude so they can learn to enjoy their own company, to conduct inner dialogues. Schooled people are conditioned to dread being alone. And we definitely see that today, don't we? They seek constant companionship through the TV, the cell phone, through shallow friendships, quickly acquired and quickly abandoned. Your children should have a more important life, and they can. First, though, wake up to what our schools really are. Laboratories of experimentation on young minds, drill centers for habits and attitudes. Mandatory education serves children only incidentally. Its real purpose is to turn them into servants, going back to that Woodrow Wilson quote. Don't let your own have their childhoods taken over, not even for a day. If David Farragut could take command of a captured British warship as a preteen, if Benjamin Franklin could apprentice himself to a printer at the same age, and then put himself through a course of study that would choke a Yale senior today, there's no telling what your own kids could do. After a long life and 30 years in public school trenches, I have concluded that genius is as common as dirt. We suppress genius because we haven't yet figured out how to manage a population of educated men and women. I think the solution is simple. Let them educate themselves. Woo! Which we're going to be talking about. We're going to dive into that, what all that means. But that's inspiring, right? We have, yes, I can put that quote in the Facebook group. We have the opportunity here to take our children down a different path. Maybe differently than the one that we were given, but definitely different than the one society is saying is the only path. And so let me give you a picture of what this gentle path is. I'm going to do some compare and contrasting here. First of all, the gentle path. It has a definite role for the teacher and a definite role for the student, but it is not teacher dependent. The teacher is not doing all the work. And we're going to be talking about this tomorrow, what Charlotte Mason had to say about the role of a teacher and the role of a student, because you definitely have to have an understanding of that in order to go down this path. Oftentimes people think, in response to what I just read about where he's talking about let the students educate themselves, that it's just, oh, well, what do you want to learn about? And we could do this or we could do that. And it's child-led or interest-driven. And that's not what Charlotte Mason is advocating at all. The students are doing the hard work of learning for themselves, but there's a definite role of the teacher as well. but it's not teacher dependent. The teacher head is not the source of all knowledge, not guiding, prodding, directing, doing all of that. The teacher is more of a guide and friend. So we'll dive really deeply into this point tomorrow. Okay, the gentle path is developmentally appropriate and individualized. It's not standardized. Our children are not cogs on a machine. It's not input in, XYZ out, okay? Just because you're putting something in doesn't mean this is going to take it this year, at this stage, or at this level. Our children are learning and growing at different paces. That's part of the individual component, which is such a blessing for being homeschooled, right? We can offer that to our children. It's not because you're in a class of all 9-year-olds that you're expected to do XYZ. We can provide that individualized education for our children, but it's also developmentally appropriate. It's not developmentally appropriate for kindergartners to be writing several sentences. I used to teach kindergarten, and it just bothers me so much. So you have to, like, if you ever go into a school and the kindergarten's writing on the wall, it looks so pretty, but like, you don't realize is it took that teacher like weeks in order to come up with that product. Again, it's results driven. Here's our perfect, pretty product. But most of the time, I can guarantee you the teacher's doing most of that work. Okay, so Charlotte Mason's approach is brilliant because it really takes into account what children can do, how they think and grow, and it builds on their skills and their knowledge from there. It's not everyone's expected to do this. Like, we don't expect all 6-year-olds to wear the same size shoe, do we? No. Why do we all expect them to learn the same? Anyway, I can go on for years about this. Okay. Yes, Tammy, I'm the same way. I love that Charlotte Mason doesn't have grades. We would come into this, and again, it's the last 150 years. You look before that, right? Like Little House on the Prairie and Anne of Green Gables, and you have the one-room schoolhouse. We have children of all ages, and studies have shown how much children learn from either looking at older children and emulating and wanting to be like them, how that motivated the younger kids, but then how the older kids learned how to learn so much by teaching and modeling things for the younger kids and learning how to nurture and care. Anyway, so our grade level system, again, is so different from how humans have learned forever. Okay, so the gentle path is driven by a desire to learn for the love of knowledge. I want to learn this because I'm a curious human being, which we all are because that's how God made us. And I want to know and I want to grow, and these things are beautiful and these things are interesting and these things are good. I want to know more. I want to know what happens in the next chapter, right? Rather than the traditional path, which is you learn, you do the work so that you can get a reward. Like I said, I love those. Do they even make those anymore? Back in my day, we had scratch and sniff stickers. Anybody else? I would like study so that I could get a scratch and sniff sticker. Or the grade, right? I need this grade. I need the 4.0. I need this. Or competition. Oh, I did better than you did. Or maybe teachers even pair kids up against each other, right? Or this group, the rainbow group did better than the unicorn group or whatever. We need the competition in order to learn. We're not just learning for the sake of learning. The gentle path develops critical thinking and communication skills, whereas the traditional path develops passive thinking and learned helplessness. Like when I also taught 5th grade in public school, and it was like, is this going to be on the test? Do I really need to know this? Just tell me what the answer is. They didn't want to learn for the sake of learning. Oh, like, this is really interesting. I want to know about World War II. It was just like, just tell me what I need to know, right? Because it's that passive approach. The teacher's pouring forth, telling you what's important, telling you what to know. They're assessing you to make sure that you learned what they thought was important for you to know. And so you get this learned helplessness, like, why bother? Why bother trying to learn all this? A lot of students just shut off because they're not getting the reward or the great grade or the competition. And so they adopt this kind of learned helplessness mentality of, doesn't matter what I do, I'm never gonna figure out what this lady wants me to know for this test. So why bother? And they just learn this learned helplessness approach. The gentle path allows time for solitude. John Taylor Gatto mentioned that in the book Dumbing Us Down that I just read to you all. Whereas the traditional path is very overscheduled. And I would also argue that even homeschoolers, we can be so overscheduled that our children do not have time for solitude or time to be outside, which Charlotte Mason talks about, but studies have shown are so key for a child's development. What does solitude give our kids? It allows time for all those ideas and all the things that they're learning about to take root inside their minds. And when their days are full of constant noise, constant chatter, constant moving from this thing to that thing, they don't ever have time to have that deep reflection, solitude, and having that flexibility in your schedule for you and your kids, I would argue, is so key for a healthy life. And I'm going to read to you here from Dumbing Us Down again. Here's the example he gives. He's going to calculate how much time most children, again, this is school, but I do think a lot of times as homeschoolers, we can adopt this and we forget to allow our children kind of the slow growing time. Okay, so out of the 168 hours in a week, children sleep for about 56 of those. So that leaves 112 hours, okay? Then out of that, reports say children watch 55 hours of television a week. So now they only have 57 hours. And I would argue that cell phones have upped that. It's probably half that number now, but we're just going to work with the 57 from when this book was written. Children attend school 30 hours a week. Then you have travel. Then you have where they are under adult directed activities, sports, lessons, those kind of things. And then he talks about eating dinner. Takes so many hours a week. And by the time he's finished, they have 9 hours a week of private time. And so it really caused me to think, like, how much private time do my kids have? How can I give them more and allow that time for solitude and allow us to not feel like we're constantly rushing and filling our days with so many different things, right? All right, the gentle path, the mentality is that education is the end. Whereas the traditional path, education is a means to an end. We have an education so that we can get this result and do X, Y, Z. Whereas the general path is the education is the end. This is the beautiful thing. We get to learn about this and we get to do this and we get to explore this and we get to have these adventures. This is the beauty. This is the moment. And I encourage you to think about that because it'll change the way that you show up on a daily basis. Because if education is just a means to an end, we just got to get through all this stuff. We just got to make sure like we just check off these boxes, do this thing, do this next thing, do this next thing, do this next thing, rather than going, wait, this is the moment right here, experiencing this. Oh my goodness, look at this caterpillar you just found in the yard and let's touch it and let's describe it. And oh, we're reading this story and can I just be here in this moment? What would it be like to be this person that was living back then? And we're reading this book. What do you think? And we're able to just relax and just enjoy it because this is what we're here for. This is the education. It's these moments and this experience that we get to have, not just waiting for some result that they're going to have someday. Hey there, Julie Ross here. I just wanted to say thank you for listening to today's episode. If you like this show, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a positive review in iTunes. This really does help people learn about the podcast. And each month I will pick a winner to receive a free gift. Don't forget to check out all the free resources we created for you at thefeastlife.me. Thank you.